Hi, everyone. Welcome to Let's Talk. My name is Nick Cosgrove, and I'm joined today by my good friend, Arthur Laskowski. Art, how are you?
I'm well, thanks. Hi, Nick.
How you hanging in there?
Getting bored, but other than that, it's okay. I get to work at home, so that part works out for me. Um, but yeah, it's tough not to be able to get out and just do what you normally would do for fun.
Yeah, we're like entering week 7 here in Vancouver, I think now.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. It seems like it hasn't been very long, but at the same time, it feels like it's been forever,
Well, that's true. And the last time I had you on the channel was, I think, at the end of March.
right?
You were on episode 2. You're
This whole thing had just started, so yeah.
That's right. Yeah, and you're the first returning guest.
Oh, thank you very much. I guess I didn't blow it too bad the first time.
No, no, not at all.
All
And
right.
one of the reasons actually I wanted to get Art on today, unfortunately we had a really sad incident happen in bodybuilding yesterday with the passing of Luke Sandoe, young bodybuilder at 30 years old. We don't want to speculate how he died. There's been rumors of suicide. There's been rumors of drug overdose. I mean, I'm not here to speculate. I don't know, so I'm not going to say. But I thought, I want to get Art on and I want to talk about bodybuilding. And I want to talk about if he thinks bodybuilding is getting too extreme and too dangerous. He's a bodybuilder. I'm a bodybuilder. We've both been competing for well over a decade. So we follow the game. We know who's in it, who's out. We kind of know what's going on behind the scenes. So I thought he'd be a great person to bring on. So, Art, what did you think yesterday when you heard of Luke Sandoe's passing?
I was pretty surprised because of his young age at 30. You hear of people in their 40s and 50s dying from heart attacks or kidney failure. You don't often hear of somebody 30 and under passing, although, there was a 26-year-old not too long ago who did pass as well. But it's shocking. And it's right away, your mind begins to wonder why. Does it have something to do with their use of obviously performance enhancing drugs, steroids, or other supplements of various kinds? So there's questions. It's not normal for somebody who appears so healthy and strong and vital to suddenly pass away. Uh, in Luke's case, I read an article today which came as close to confirming it was suicide as possible. So there's not just the physical side to this of heart failure or kidney failure, there's the mental health state of things in the industry as well. And that's something I think we often ignore and needs to be addressed as well.
Yeah, and I mean, you brought up the passing of a 26-year-old, and I think you were referring to Dallas MacArthur. Is that correct?
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah, and there was speculation with that one as well because there was all kinds of people saying, they looked at his steroid dosages and then they said, no, that was a genetic deficiency. So that one we're still unsure of as well. But we know that there had the anabolics didn't help in that case.
Yeah.
We know that it was a physical attribute that led to his death. Whereas right now with Luke's case, people are speculating suicide. And I read that article as well. And people, I don't think they talk about as much, like you just said, the mental components that happen when you take anabolic steroids as well.
That's true. I mean, there's always a mental health aspect to everybody's life. And it's always kind of scary because so many times it seems to come out of nowhere. So we think of people like Robin Williams, for example,
Sure.
a megastar, the class, just an absolute clown and so funny. And yet there were obviously huge underlying issues there that he battled with and eventually overcame him. Who knows what's going on in Luke's life or what was happening there? We'll probably never really know. But it's a part of life that happens to everybody. In the case of bodybuilders, I think that can sometimes be exacerbated or made worse or more difficult by some of the supplements that they're taking. I mean, there's some of them are known to be almost depression inducing in their effect. And so they can affect mental health. Not only that, but there's other aspects too. There's the whole addiction issue. So once you reach at such a young age, the pinnacle and the heights that he had reached, it must be very hard on the psyche to realize this is going to end someday. And what am I going to be like? And if you've invested your being, yourself, in what you look like without any real other underpinnings, that can lead to some mental health issues as well.
Sure. I mean, you look at a lot of retired football players or wrestlers or baseball players and, athletes in general. And once they're out of the spotlight, it's kind of like a lot of them do go into that depression, right?
Yeah.
And, they've said that anabolic steroids are not addictive. And I don't know if I necessarily agree with that, but I think the feeling that when you're on them, that powerful, I can do anything feeling, that's addictive.
I agree.
And it's interesting because, like, in this case, we're talking about a guy who was in his 30s. He had two young kids. He had a 15-year-old and I think an 8-year-old. And I just saw him on a podcast on Monday, which was 4 days ago. And he seemed super happy and he was in a great mood and he was making jokes. So you never know what's going on behind the scenes.
Yeah.
Do you think, I mean, you've been following the sport longer than I have. You've been doing bodybuilding since the 70s and you've seen it come from, 4 different decades now. What, in your opinion, do you think they're starting to push the envelope too much with the anabolics?
I think anabolics have always been around in bodybuilding. It's probably the purity, perhaps, or the strength of the drugs has improved or increased, or however you want to look at it. In addition, there's just so many more drugs now that are available to especially pros or people who can afford it. And things besides anabolics. There's always growth hormone, which is a big thing that they're using, and insulin as well. There's never really been adequate sort of evidence-based studies to determine, and long-term, to determine exactly what the effects of these things are on people. So we tend to rely on anecdotal evidence or smaller, perhaps flawed studies, which will show that, oh, this is a killer drug, you better not ever take it.
Yeah.
So we have these extremes where some people say, oh, it's all overblown, there's no risk at all, I'm just going to help myself. And on the other extreme, don't you go anywhere near that stuff, it'll kill you for sure.
Yeah.
And I'm sure there's a happy medium in there somewhere. But that's
well, you're right, because there's no ethical, you can't do an ethical study on someone on long-term use of anabolic steroids. People are saying it can cause this, it can cause that, but there's not that many people. You and I talked about this yesterday off camera. There's not that many people actually, like bodybuilders, that are just dying. Like, we're not having a bodybuilder die every day or every week. It's just been the last 5 years, there's been a lot of younger guys, and there have been some serious issues. In this case, they're thinking it may have been more of a mental issue. And that's why I thought this was an interesting topic to talk about, because we already know some of the long-term side effects of anabolic, usage, especially if it's abused with the kidneys and then with the heart. We know that, but the mental part is not talked about that much.
No, it really isn't. I read a really great article the other day on a website called Barbell, or is it thebarbell.com? I can't remember its exact name.
Okay.
Fantastic article. It just stuck to more or less the physical statistics of males past or dying. And they compared over the last 50 years or so, 60 years even, the mortality rate among bodybuilders as compared to the mortality rate of the average American male. And it was a very good article. They did examine it from several different aspects, which I thought was very good, so that it shone a light really on the whole spectrum, and it took into account things like age and, especially age, but also the era in which they were living and the things that were going on at that time, etc. I found 2 really interesting things came out of that. One is, on average, over the whole span of it, the mortality rate of bodybuilders was actually less than the average American male.
Right.
If you look at athletes in particular, then the mortality rate of bodybuilders is higher than, let's say, NFL, MLB, or NBA players, but lower than wrestlers, interestingly.
Yes.
So a lot of that, and the article speculated that difference is could easily be due to heart kidney issues which come about from the use of anabolic steroids.
Sure.
And that would be because at that level, they're usually taking fairly significant amounts, which you wouldn't see in other sports.
No. And like you said, lifestyle has a lot to do with it as well. You
Yeah.
take the average, I mean, if you're using an American in this case, I mean, even some Canadians too, the sedentary average male who doesn't do anything, that to me is actually more dangerous than taking anabolic steroids.
Exactly. And they made that point that the average American male tends to be obese. They are often smokers, very little activity in their life, and eat very poorly.
Yeah.
So a bodybuilder will generally tend to have a lot of pluses in their life. You take off the use of the anabolic steroids, and you've got people who eat well, eat right, for like all the time, not just for a quick show or something. And they generally tend not to be smokers or users of other crazy drugs. And so there's a lot of pluses in their life, which would extend that mortality rate for them, or make it better, I guess you could say, than the average American male.
Yeah, I agree. And, it's funny because I had a natural bodybuilder on the channel a few weeks ago named Chuck Thompson, and he's 72. And I mean, I said to him, I said, any health issues, any injuries, anything like that? He's like, no. He's like, I'm fine. He's like, I feel just as good at 72 than I did when I was 32. Yeah. And, that's a perfect example of someone who lives and breathes the lifestyle. And that's actually why I wanted to get you on, because you're not someone who just preps for a show for 12 weeks. And then after that, you don't go to the gym and you just, you shit the bed on your diet and you eat whatever you want. You practice this lifestyle day in, day out. Right. Yeah. And so does he. And so do I. And that's what I wanted to talk about because I think when we hear about these passings and the abusage of anabolic steroids, people automatically assume that bodybuilding is dangerous.
Yeah.
And it's getting to a point, like, I mean, I'm having young guys contact me and asking me for insulin protocols. And I'm like, I don't even know how to take insulin. I have no idea. That's like, you're contacting the wrong person. So, I mean, that just shows you how much more advanced it's getting. It's almost like chemical warfare out there on the stage.
Yeah.
As a bodybuilder yourself, is that frustrating to see?
If you're competitive, there's definitely that pressure. And of course, what's happened now, I think, is a really great trend in the competition field. You're seeing more and more natural shows, and they're more heavily attended and participated in than ever before, which is a great trend. So there's this sort of a general movement among the population, sort of, who are interested in bodybuilding, but not in the extremes that you go to with the results you get with the drug use. Now, having said that, of course, there's a certain attraction to seeing the big mass monsters on stage. It's right. So freaky and so unreal. It's like going to the circus and saying, what is this thing? I've got to see this. Yeah. And so at that level, yeah, there's going to be a lot of pressure, I think, to do that. And to do whatever it takes to sometimes. So a lot depends on the individual, whether they respond to that or whether they can somehow manage that well or not. Some manage it very well. Some of them manage it just by luck. Their bodies are very tolerant of all kinds of things. Others have perhaps underlying health issues that they may not even be aware of, which if they go down that road, it can be very dangerous for them as well. So it is a bit of a Russian roulette when you're doing it. When it comes to the highest level pros, a lot of them, not all, but a lot will have really great guidance with their coaches and mentors and that sort of thing. And if they don't get carried away in their own minds with this mindset that if a little is good, more is better, they could probably manage it fairly well. The dangerous part is with the recreational users, the bros you see in the gym, who really think, I could be like that. I'm never going to compete. I'll even skip leg day, but, by golly, I'm going to have the biggest arms in the room. Yeah. And so they start injecting all kinds of things just because that's what their goal is. And it becomes a vanity thing and not a sports thing at that point.
Yeah, and that's what I think is exactly what gives a sport a bad name. I see them all the time. I see guys in the gym they're massive. I mean, they're not physiques that I'd want because their physiques just don't look aesthetically pleasing. And you're right. The training's not really there. The diet's not there, but they've got some good genetics and, they're taking I don't even know how much anabolic steroids. Like we're talking like maybe 3 or 4 vials a week. And, it really gives the image of bodybuilding to be like this unhealthy sport. And, you and I are perfect examples of people who've been in this sport. We've competed. We're both healthy. We both go for regular blood work. I mean, I know you go once a year. I get my blood work done on a regular basis. And I tell all my clients, whether you're enhanced or not, get your blood work done at least once a year to see what's going on.
Yeah.
In your opinion, though, right now, with the way that the sport is going, do you see it getting like any better? Do you think they're going to enforce like mandatory blood tests before you compete? Like, do you think they're going to make people get their blood work done?
That's a really good question. I don't see it happening yet, partly because the people who put on the shows, the promoters, for them it's business. And business means you've got to make a profit. You've got to make money. To do that in bodybuilding, you've got to put on a great show. Putting on a great show means your athletes have to be able to attract the audience, the paying members. So to do that, you sometimes have to just let them go and do what they want to do. Yeah. Because it's like I said, it's like a freak show almost, right? And that's what's going to attract the money. So I can't see it being done voluntarily where every show is going to have to require some sort of a testing or whatever the case may be. Having said that, I mean, this whole COVID thing could change things too, just from a health perspective, having to undergo some kind of test, at least for the next couple of years, to make sure that all the participants in a show are going to be okay and not carrying some kind of a bug. But that's a different issue.
Do you think, I mean, I don't know if you heard this, but as it was announced today that the Olympia has been postponed, do you think there's going to be a bodybuilding season in 2020?
Most of it's been wiped out already. The big one was the Olympia. If they postponed that now, I missed the announcement. I knew it was coming out today, but I just haven't come across it yet. I thought from the sounds of their lead up to it, it was just going to be postponed until maybe November or December, but we'll see. And I don't know if it's been canceled outright or what will happen. But basically, it's not just the show date and the audience being able to sit next to each other and everything like that. It takes months for athletes to prepare. And leading up to a show, if the gyms are all closed, then nobody's going to sign up.
No. It's hard.
Everybody's going to be in poor shape. I mean, there's only so many push-ups you can do at home to get yourself into a stage-ready condition.
Yeah.
As some people have gyms at home, but really very few.
How do you think, I mean, I'm in the industry, the gym industry, but how do you think from someone who, you go to commercial gyms and you train, how do you think they're going to make a comeback post-COVID?
Wow, I think it'll be tough. As you know, Steve Nash is in bankruptcy protection right now.
Yeah.
They're restructuring their organization. So who knows what will happen with them? Who knows what their plans are? And others may be teetering on the edge as well. I suspect that perhaps some of the smaller gyms with a very loyal, almost family atmosphere, clientele, they'll be able to recover. People will go back there. A question was posed on one of the Facebook sites I'm a member of where the question was asked, when the gyms reopen, who's going back? And it was about 50-50, actually.
Oh, is that right? Okay.
Yeah, 50% said, yes, I'll be there first day with my boots on. The second half said, I've really got used to working out at home. I'm only going to go to the gym once in a while, but most of my workouts from now on are going to be done on my own or at home or outside at the track or whatever. So it was really interesting.
Well, and it can be done. I mean, when we had to close our gym down, I had a lot of clients sign up to work with me online for just training programs, which I do train people online, but usually they have a gym that they go to. And now I had to be creative and thinking, okay, we got to come up with all these body weight exercises. And you know what? I give these people credit because they're not trying to compete on stage, but they're keeping their weight down. They're staying in shape. there's a lot of people that are just shitting the bed on their diet right now. And they're not doing, I see them and I know who they are. And I'm like, they're just giving up. They're using COVID-19 as an excuse not to do anything.
Yeah. Oh, I totally admire those people who keep, just thundering on with what they were doing before, just making changes, altering it to fit their current imposed lifestyle. But they're sticking to their diet. They're doing other exercises and all of that. I mean, for me personally, I prefer the gym. I love the gym atmosphere. I love the equipment. It has everything I need to get the goals that I want to accomplish. So working out at home for me is a real chore. It's a challenge.
Yeah.
But you're right. It can be done.
It can.
Fitness, absolutely. And just for fitness, it's fantastic. My mindset for the last 12 years or so has always been about the next competition or being in competition shape or close to it. And so that's a mindset that I struggle with, that I have to sort of learn to set aside and say, well, it doesn't have to be about that. There's a million benefits beyond competing that are health related, and they're really the important ones.
That's funny that you mentioned that, because I put out a video the other day talking about that, how my mind, I was just like you, I'm thinking, okay, competition, but now there's no competition. So what's your motivation to work out? And for me, I'm just thinking, okay, now it's for survival. There's a virus going out there and I want to make sure I keep my immune system as strong as possible. Me sitting on the couch, staying inside, eating a bag of chips is not going to help. Staying inside, yes, is good, but at the same time, you still want to move, right? We're not supposed to just stay inside 24 hours a day. So it's good to get out and just get a little bit of action. And, like you said, a little home workout here and there, some push-ups, sit-ups, whatever you can do.
Yeah.
You mentioned Steve Nash, which is, for those people that don't know, that's a very famous gym here in Vancouver, British Columbia. I think it has over 24 locations.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that gym, the last time you were on, it hadn't closed yet. I don't think they had said anything. They had just closed down for COVID-19. They didn't declare bankruptcy. Since then, I've had about 3 or 4 trainers on the channel who've worked there. And they were all very disgruntled with the way they were treated. You were a member there yourself. Did you have any negative experience after that did they charge your credit card or anything like that?
Well, unfortunately, I had prepaid my membership.
Okay.
So I still had about a year left.
Oh, wow.
And so whatever I've prepaid, I'm sure it's going to be all gone. And I didn't have to deal with credit cards being charged and that sort of thing. But, it leaves a bad taste in your mouth this was a phenomenon that happened 2 decades ago, where it was pretty routine for gyms to open, stay there for a while, and then shut down, and everybody loses their money.
Yeah.
So we became very careful. We'd say, no, I don't want to prepay. I just want to go month by month. And that's what everybody sort of did for the last 2 decades. But then with Steve Nash, being such a big gym, I always felt comfortable. And, the big name associated with it, a big corporation, they, on the surface, seemed to run a pretty good shop. And I felt pretty confident with giving them my money in advance.
Yeah.
But obviously, there's lessons to be learned as you go along through life all the time. So there's one.
Well, and some people are telling me that COVID-19 was the best thing to happen to a business like Steve Nash that was already not doing well. So they can use this as a perfect excuse to say, hey, look, we're bankrupt, natural disaster, whatever you want to call COVID-19, but they could blame it on that. Now, you should know better, because you've been in this situation before with a previous gym that just shut down, and I was there with you.
Yeah.
So I'm surprised that you did that.
Yeah, I know, but I don't know. I got a really good deal at Steve Nash because I've been there such a long time.
Right.
So it was easier for me to do that and take advantage of that extra. See, if I pay in advance, I get 6 months free. And so it was a no-brainer. I was paying, if you worked it out, average per month, a lot less than what the people paying monthly were getting.
Yeah.
So, but you're right. Steve Nash, I think, what probably are the only ones smiling through this whole COVID thing, because it's the perfect opportunity for them to say, hold the phone here. Let's get rid of that class action lawsuit that we're dealing with. Let's get rid of all our debt. We'll restructure and rebuild.
And it's a shame too, because we're not coming down on Steve Nash. There's other businesses that are doing this too, not just them. There's multiple businesses.
Yeah.
But, working in the gym industry, I've worked in the fitness industry for close to 20 years, and I know how shady it can be. I've known some pretty shady gym owners. And I always tell my clients when they sign up for a gym, the first thing I say is whatever you have a contract that says that you're going to get, even if you sign up with a trainer, you're going to get money back for unused sessions. And that's one thing I always say to every single one of our clients who buys a package. I said, if you're not happy with our service, any unused sessions, we'll refund you full. I don't want someone to be there that doesn't want to be there. But I'm not a big business like a Steve Nash or a Good Life or anything like that. But I'm not trying to lock people in.
Yeah.
What
I think the difference with the big gym and you is that they deal with you directly, and you're, the cook, bottle washer, and everything in that facility or with your business. And so you're accountable to the people who are your members. With Steve Nash, you never know who the head cooks are. You'll never ever see them. So it's the staff at the front desk, and what do they know? They have no authority. There's nothing they can do. So you're kind of looped that way.
Yeah, and it's interesting because I've never worked for a gym before, so I don't know how it works. And I had really good perspectives from other trainers who have on the channel, and they were saying it's a number game. It's all about in and out, volume. And I always look at it as, I guess, because I am a small business, I say that one client who can be with you for 15, 20 years is so much more important than just trying to get the next client, the next client, the next client. That's the way my mind works.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Not even from a money perspective. It's more just you want to offer a good quality service and you want that long-term loyalty in return.
Absolutely. I mean, Steve Nash is not my first choice for the kind of gym I would normally join.
Yeah.
They are a big corporation. They have way more cardio equipment than they really need and that sort of thing. It was just the circumstances for me in terms of their locations and my locations, which made it the most convenient gym to go to. I mean, personally, I prefer a smaller, hardcore, old school kind of a gym.
Yeah.
But there's just not many of those around. They can't compete with Steve Nash's, and so they disappear. And that's how it is.
Yeah, I mean, gyms that market to bodybuilders these days, they're far in between. There's not many of them because you have to cater to your demographic and what do people want. There's not many bodybuilders out there anymore. I mean, when you think, and a lot of bodybuilders don't have the money, right?
Right. I mean, there's not many, I would say not many competitive bodybuilders. In a way, everybody who goes to a gym is a bodybuilder.
Yes.
They're hoping to change their body, to do some things to restructure what they look like and what their body composition is. So they're bodybuilders too. But in terms of competitive, where you go past a fitness type of bodybuilding and enter that realm of progressively larger and larger muscles to show off aesthetically on a stage, there's very, very few anymore.
You're right when you say that, because I actually tell every single one of my clients, I'm like, you're a bodybuilder, right? And they look at me like, I'm not a greased up monkey on stage. I say, you're doing a bodybuilding split. That's the split that I have every single one of my clients follow, because I truly believe that's a great way to train. It's following progressive overload. You're not going crazy power lifts, doing 2 or 3 repetitions where you can injure yourself. There's no CrossFit. Not bad mouthing those type of styles of training, but the risk of injury is much higher when you start doing that type of training.
Yeah.
There's bodybuilding has always been slow, controlled. You warm up, you cool down. Very few people, I mean, in my case, your case, we don't really get many injuries, right?
No, absolutely. Yeah.
I wanted to just go back before I let you go, because I actually wanted your opinion on this. Now, you've been following the decades of bodybuilding from the 70s, 80s, 90s, 2000s. I want your favorite decade, and then I want to know who your favorite bodybuilder is.
Oh, wow. I have 2 favorite bodybuilders.
Okay, yeah.
One was Flex Wheeler, who was amazing. He never won the Olympia, but he was so close so many times, and he had such a beautifully aesthetic body, such a tiny waist, and everything was perfect. And then Ronnie Coleman, who is probably my favorite, especially his early days. Best decade, that's hard to say. Each decade has its own stamp of what made it that decade. It's just hard to say which would be my favorite. I mean, I like things about every decade, I mean, the 70s, because it was it was the birthing of what we would call the big bodybuilding, like Arnold and Franco and guys who came shortly after him. So that was so exciting to see that. It's the first time we saw some real I'll call them freaks. I mean, very few people had arms like Arnold.
Yeah, yeah.
That was his real trademark.
Even to this day, I mean, you look at his chest, you look at his biceps, and he was on very little stuff in comparison to what guys are running today as far as anabolic usage.
Oh yeah, it would be amazing to see what he would look like if he was doing it today.
Exactly. And
pretty crazy. I mean, and then the 80s, that's when you had a lot of life. That's when things really took off. With Dorian Yates, for example, and what's the guy he beat?
Lee Haney.
The 8-time Olympia winner.
Lee Haney.
Lee Haney. Oh man, was he amazing. So the 80s were fantastic for that. In the 90s, you start to see some changes, and that's when you begin to see many more what I'll call sort of like the freakish mass monsters hitting the stage, and it becoming much more common to see that. And that sort of carried on. Probably the least favorite time for me would be the 2000 to 2010. I don't know that there was too much happening in that particular decade that was exciting. Mm-hmm. Lately, we've seen some exciting things again with once sort of Ronnie Coleman sort of dropped out of it, we've been seeing a little more turnover in terms of guys winning at the Olympia. So it's become a little bit more who's going to be the next one. I mean, Phil Heath obviously was running a long string there, but and he was really good. He was phenomenal too. So it's just each decade has its own stamp. It's just fun to watch.
Well, you mentioned your two favorite bodybuilders, Flex Wheeler, Ronnie Coleman. Those are two completely different physiques. Yeah. I mean, unless you're talking about Ronnie Coleman in his early years, in the early 90s to late 90s, I could see that. But once 2000 came, Ronnie blew up. I agree with you. I think Flex Wheeler had one of the best aesthetically pleasing physiques to get on stage. Unfortunately, he didn't have a good work ethic. I mean, he's even admitted that himself.
Yeah.
But what I find interesting is that you say Ronnie Coleman was your favorite bodybuilder, but yet the decade from 2000 to 2010, you find to be one of the most boring when he won, I think, about five Olympias during that decade.
Yeah.
So was it just boring because there was no one that could compete with Ronnie?
I think that's part of it.
Yeah.
And part of it was that everybody was trying to be the same thing. And it became harder and harder to distinguish between first, second, third, fourth, fifth place. They all looked so similar and so good. Yeah. And plus you ended up with having things like the controversy around the bigger bellies, which you saw for quite a while. And I think that's walked back a bit now. You don't see that quite as much, but that was a kind of an ugly thing to see as well.
Yeah.
So it wasn't very fun.
The bubble guts.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you know what? They have changed that now, because that's why Phil Heath didn't win his 8th Olympia, because of his abdominal region.
Yeah.
And that's exactly why Sean Roden beat him back in 2000. I think it was 17, or was it 2018? Yeah. I can't remember. But and then you're right. Then they changed the game again. Now they're looking at an aesthetic look again, which I personally like, because I think that's more of an attainable physique.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Final question for you before I let you go.
Oh, yeah.
I want to ask you about your competitions. Any plans? You've always said to me, okay, it's going to be my last show. It's going to be my last show. Then last year we did 3 shows. When I say you did 3 shows. I was just there cheering you on. I only did 1 show last year. So what do you think? So we get the clearance. COVID-19 is passed. It's 2021. Shows are back on. Are you hitting the stage again? Or are you done?
Oh, man. It depends what time of day you ask me.
Depends what the wife says.
Yeah, and that too, right? Man, I really enjoy it and I love it. I guess what I have to get through my head is, no, I'm not in my 30s and 40s anymore. And no, I'm not going to look like that. But that's okay. People aren't expecting that when you're 60 something. So just do it anyway. If it's fun and if you're in good shape and you work hard for it, do it. Why not? And so I just might, but then sometimes I look at some pictures of myself in the last show that weren't that flattering. And I say, okay, you know what? That was enough. I don't really need to do this anymore.
But that's the thing. And I tell a lot of my clients who compete on stage, I said, the photographers now, they're going to snap like 150, 200 photos of you. Right. And most of them are going to be unflattering. You got your stomach out, you're breathing out. I mean, I've been in some very unflattering photos and I don't put them on Instagram, But I mean,
Yeah.
sometimes people do put them on Instagram because I'm in the background. I'm like, oh, don't put that there. It is what it is. I
Yeah.
mean, you're being judged on your physique. But I think even with me, I know sometimes when I compete, and I'm known for always getting that second place. I'm the second place guy. I'm like Jay Cutler. I get second, over and over again. And for me, every time I get second, Robin, she gets so mad. You should have won. You should, and it is what it is. I never get mad. And I know you never get mad either. You're. I don't think you and I are really in it for the placings. You know, it's good to place. It's good to place well, but I've never seen you get too upset about like, you know, placing second or third. Is it more the process for you or the competition?
It's the process. I just love it. And seeing the changes as you work out, as you eat right, as you discipline yourself and go through some sacrifices. Um, you know, it's the whole package is really what it is. It's nice to have that placing at the end as a sort of cherry on top, a bit of a validation that, yeah, you deserve this. But you know what? There are other guys out there working out just as hard, just as dedicated. And at the end of the day, if one particular judge says, well, he's better or he's better, I mean, who am I to argue with that? That's not up to me. That's nothing I can control. All I can control is my workout, my diet, my sleep. And if I control those things and put my heart and soul into it, all my effort, 110%, that's what counts. And that's where the real joy is.
That's awesome. That's what I like hearing. Art, I want to thank you so much for coming on tonight. We tried earlier. Yeah, we tried earlier today. We had some technical difficulties, but I'm glad I could get you on tonight.
This was really fun. Thanks, Nick. I appreciate all your video shows. I love them, and they're so informative and shine such a light on the whole broad spectrum of working out generally, not just bodybuilding, but health and everything else. So they're really educational, really fun to watch.
Thank you very much. And, you know, when I heard about the passing of Luke Sandoe, I was going to make a video about it because I thought it should be addressed. I wanted to show respect for his family, though, obviously, and I didn't want to start speculating what could or could not have happened. Who knows? That's not what's important. What is important is we lost a very good person. But I thought, you know, I want to come on and I want to talk. And I thought you'd be the perfect person to come on with me and discuss this, because I'm worried that bodybuilding is getting this bad reputation and people are associating it with drugs and, like, you know, people dying early and all this. And really, that's not the case, because it can be a healthy sport.
Yeah, it really can. It really is. For me personally, it's my sport of choice for health, because it's the only one that changes your body composition and gives you the health benefits that you really want. And you can do it forever. There's guys in their 70s and 80s still doing this 100%. And I'd like to be one of them.
I think you will be. Art, thank you so much. It was great talking to you. I always enjoy talking with you and catching up.
All right. See you later.
Have a great weekend.
You too. Bye now.
Art. Bye.